hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Abid Tej here with me on the show. Abid is a coach, Psych-K practitioner, and host of the Optimal Being podcast. Super excited to have you here, Abid. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Brandon. So excited to be here.
Yeah, man. When I first saw your logo, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get along. You know, you have the word optimal in there, and of course, I have the show Optimistic, my new show, and then your little logo reminds me of the Positive Head logo. I'm like, okay, me and Abid are gonna definitely get along. So, definitely looking forward to exploring and discussing, all the things that you have to share. I always like to start at the same predictable opening question, and it is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
What's my passion? Helping people see the power they never knew they had.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, let's talk about how you got there. I always also like to get a little bit of backstory on, how people ended up in the place in life that they've currently landed anyway. What led to you doing what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah, the backstory is critical. So what, I guess, in my past life, we call that, but basically
one of your many past lives.
One of my many past lives, no, in this lifetime.
Right.
No, so I was in the world. Important note, yeah, we have to make the distinction, right?
Right.
I was in the world of, I guess, entrepreneurship business. So I studied at business school. I ran my own startup. I worked for one of the top startups out in London, very much business focused. And, I had a number of instances in my life where I was peeking behind the veil, so to speak. Things were happening that I couldn't really explain. And then, lo and behold, after I finished business school, I went to work and I got all the things that I thought I needed to be happy, or at least what society told me to be happy. I had the nice job, I had the nice apartment, I had the good career track, all that la-di-da-di stuff. And that year was actually one of the most stress-inducing years of my life. I saw one of my good close friends suffer with a mental health breakdown. I had to coach through that. And I was like, this is not right. Like, this really doesn't feel right. I thought if I had this stuff, I'd be happy, but I was the complete opposite. And I was like, there's something wrong here. So I quit my life in London. I bought a one-way ticket to East Asia. And I literally just traveled around for 6-7 months, really just reconnecting with myself, recentering, asking myself questions that no one really even dared to ask me before, and studying and reading a lot about the stuff that I was interested in, which was consciousness, yoga, meditation, all that kind of stuff. And I came across a book called Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, actually, Bruce was on this show a while back.
No way.
Yeah, I love that guy. He's so
good. Amazing. Yeah. So when I read some of the book, I watched the presentation, I was completely blown away. Then he talked about some of these modalities where you could actually tap into the subconscious mind and transform stuff that you've been dealing with for years in minutes. And I was like, okay, this seems a little bit too good to be true, but I want to go and test this out. So I came back to London, and of course there was a workshop that was going on that summer, excuse me, signed up, and I experienced shifts in that, and I saw other people experiencing shifts which normally they were trying to get over stuff that would take years. And I was like, okay, there's something here. And that's when I went full in. I did my training with that, and that's when I started, unpeeling my own layers. Once I did that, I then started helping other people do theirs.
Cool, man. Yeah, I remember when Bruce posted after our interview, he's like, I thought it was really funny because I didn't kind of expect it from him. He's like, all right, everyone, come and get yourself some positive head, Like,
oh my God.
I'm like, Bruce, easy, buddy. Yeah, he's funny. So yeah, if you guys want to go back and check it out, by the way, I'll just throw it out there. It's episode 161. So that was a while ago. We're like at 1200 now. So,
wow.
But yeah, Bruce wrote The Biology of Belief, and there's actually I always recommend to people there's an hour long YouTube as well where it's him giving a talk at some conference or something that's like if you search Biology of Belief, and it's his whole breakdown, I guess a summary of what the book is about. And I think it's such a groundbreaking work to understand epigenetics and this idea that we actually turn genes on and off with our beliefs. And not, we've all been told, from up until recently, really, right, that it's in your genes, right? And well, hold on, those things are not fixed. They are dynamic, and they shift based off of your beliefs and what you're doing with your how you're taking care of yourself. Are you exercising? What are you thinking? What and he actually shows in the book the science of that, which is of course science and spirituality I think are doing such a dance right now that really brings so much validity to all the things that we talk about on the show, right? And so he's one of the best at that. So what a cool guy to learn under.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing. So very grateful for him.
Yeah. So and I remember him talking about Psych-K, which is his I guess modality, right? That him and someone else, if I recall, maybe developed together.
Yes, well, they didn't quite develop it together. From what I understand, it's the one that actually helped him to uncover the blocks that were stopping him from writing his book, Biology of Belief.
Gotcha.
So I think he was at a presentation, and he was talking about the science of epigenetics, beliefs, and what have you. And synchronistically, the presentation after was because someone asked him in the audience, how do you actually transform this? And that's when he was stuck. Because he knew the science, he didn't know how to actually transform it. The presentation after was by a guy called Rob Williams, who's the founder of Psych-K, and he was talking about how you actually transform the limiting beliefs. So Bruce was like, okay, this is really interesting. And that sparked a friendship between the two. And now Bruce is, very much a spokesperson for Psych-K and the work that it does.
Yeah, and it's so powerful because you understand, once you start to understand, up until what, age 5, 6, something like that, most of your core beliefs are being sort of baked into your subconscious. And then we are, spend the rest of our lifetime operating at this much smaller percentage of what sort of, controls us, our conscious mind. And meanwhile, people get so, confused why they can't sort of shift things, and it's because they have this underlying sort of operating system that has not been accessed and reprogrammed and dealt with. And that's why you see, especially those who had a lot of childhood trauma, right? Early childhood trauma have the most challenges oftentimes in life. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And that goes down to as you said, that the subconscious is formed 95% by the time we're 6, 7 years old. So before this, we're in a theta brainwave state, which is similar to that of kind of deep meditation, hypnosis almost. So we're literally just absorbing everyone's beliefs, experiences, because there's so many rules to be a human, right? Like just sitting at the table, how you eat, how you hold your cutlery, whether you eat with your mouth full, whether you put your feet on the table. There's just so much stuff that has to go into it. It's kind of nature's way of programming us to be decent human beings. But of course, then if you're absorbing stuff from people who haven't done the work, so to speak, and they're putting down all these limiting beliefs and limiting conditionings on you, and then you absorb that, or if you go through a trauma and stuff like that happens, it then can manifest and deal with a lot larger problems, and they become a lot more kind of complex later on in life.
Right. And do you recall what it is, and I think Bruce talked about this in my soul share with him years back, but what percentage they think is, the subconscious is actually responsible for, how we behave in our day-to-day life. Do you recall those?
Yeah, it's 90 to 95% of our awareness is in the subconscious. So we operate from our subconscious 90 to 95% of the time, which is crazy to think about. But I guess an easy example is like when you were driving. That's one that everyone can relate to. When you were first learning to drive, if you were learning manual or stick, there was a lot of things going on. You had to give it 100% concentration, 100% awareness. And now, you can drive, have a coffee, speak to your friend all at the same time. It's become a subconscious process, and it kind of just goes. So that's an easy example for a lot of people that will hopefully get that.
Right. And so how long ago did you start down this path working?
It was, Psych-K? Over 3 years ago I started.
Wow. I bet you have you seen some pretty impactful stories of people?
Yeah, there's been some huge complete changes. There was, shall I share one of them quickly?
Yeah. We are always up for story time on this podcast.
Yeah,
so
beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So I think one of the stories that I wanted to share was a woman that who had suffered. She basically couldn't eat hot food. She was bulimic and anorexic, and essentially what had happened is there had been a trauma where her husband had passed away a year before. They were biking, and he had a sudden heart attack. He passed away just after they had eaten a meal. So her subconscious had obviously registered this traumatic experience, and since then she couldn't eat food properly. She would throw up and what have you. Now, what we did is we just did a few processes. There's a number of processes in Psych-K. One of the ones we did was just to transform that perception of the stress that happened, right? Because the subconscious, it's always in the present moment. I'll speak about that in a minute. So we just transformed the stress of that and how she perceived it to happen. And that same day, she had her first hot meal. She hadn't had a hot meal in a year. And since then, she's been eating fine.
Wow.
So that was one of them. There's countless others, but I think a lot of them is really interesting, whether I'm working with a woman that's gone through trauma or whether I'm working with a high-level CEO. It's really fascinating that a lot of the stuff all comes down to childhood issues and traumas or memories that they forgot and are now coming up to the surface to be kind of revealed and healed.
Yeah. It's wild to think about how much we are impacted by these things that, could have happened 30 years ago, right? And how that still lingers. I think it's such a testament to why it's really important what you're consuming, as far as, even using television or movies as an example. I don't really like to watch movies that are super dark. And it's because I feel like it's like I'm just taking that energy on, and, it's like we're these highly sensitive instruments. And we're feeding, something into our biocomputer that's then there. You can't unsee these things or unthink these thoughts. And so I think that's this work is really such a testament to that. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And, I think it's all about going into the stuff where you don't want to going into that part of the mind, which is, the subconscious is at least 1,000,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind. So when you're doing and creating shifts on that level, you can create huge transformations in just a matter of minutes, really. I've seen people literally transform stuff that would have taken years in like a week. And it's just a testament to just how powerful you are, right? It's not me, it's not the process, it's how powerful you are as a human being. And ultimately along this life, you're your power has been stripped away from you. It's been taken away. And now it's about getting it back, tapping back into that, and realizing that ultimately you are the most badass multidimensional being there is.
Right. As badass as there's ever been, right? That's something that I always say to people. It's like anything that you admire or see or consider, once you start realizing that you're connected to everyone and everything, there's only one of us in the room, so to speak. If anyone has ever been a badass or anyone is ever worthy, it's you. Now, you may need to work on the conditions for that, acorn to grow into an oak tree, so to speak, right? And I think that's what this sort of subconscious mind work really is. It's like, okay, let's go and let's tend the garden, right? And do the work that's necessary for what's naturally inherent within each of us as a birthright to flower and bloom.
Beautifully said. Yeah, exactly. The way that I like to think about it is like the subconscious mind is like a garden, and every day you're planting seeds with what you watch, what you listen to, the people you surround yourself with, what you eat, all of this kind of stuff. So you're planting seeds every single day, and then you're watering it when you're sleeping, because the subconscious mind is most active when you're sleeping. So it's either you have a garden full of weeds or a garden full of roses, depending upon how conscious you're living. And it's just about doing the work to kind of weed it out and plant beautiful flowers so they can blossom into something amazing.
Right. So for those listening, I mean, what are some steps that they can take? Obviously, going deep and signing up for a program that is all about, like Psych-K, which is all about going and doing the work. You and I did about a 15-minute or 10-minute little session, preview session of what it's like, and it was great. I talked about the you had asked what's a trauma or something that was maybe holding me back. One of the things that if I will find myself struggling with is feeling overwhelmed with the amount of things on my plate, which then leads to a sense of anxiety or agitation or both. And so we did about maybe a 10-minute or so guided experience that definitely by the end of it, I could feel that energy, was less intense, right? We tapped into it at the beginning and drummed it up. And so what are some of the things that people can do to, someone hearing this and saying, okay, I wasn't even really fully aware. Yeah, I've heard of my subconscious before, whatever. Okay, now you guys are shining a light on how important it is that I start tending to this. How can people start working on this, on their own now?
Great question. Yeah. So one thing to know about the subconscious, it's most active in the morning and before you sleep, when you're fully awake. So what I always tell people to do is start with a simple build your pillars of your day. So what you stand for, build your rituals, and that should be around mind, body, spirit, right? So ideally, when you start your morning, don't start your morning and go straight on the phone, for example, right? Because what you're doing is you're literally just stimulating stress in your system. And I remember someone once told me that emails is someone else's to-do list for you, right? So you're already going into a stress response straight in the day. And if you do it before you sleep as well, you're carrying that with you into the next day, that energy. So what you want to do is
one of the things I've really been guilty. Sorry, that's one of the things I've been guilty of is like jumping out of bed and going straight into work mode, and hence we've talked about what the results of that could be, right? And so
exactly, I stress, overwhelmed, or as if there's not enough to do. I'm not in the power to do stuff about it. It's just a negative spiral. So what you need to do is you need to take control of that time and use that time for you. Whether it is 10 minutes, a 60-minute routine, whatever it is, start with mind, body, soul. So mind. The first thing I like to do is work on the body. So ideally, if I'm in a lack of time, maybe a 7-minute workout. If I have longer time, I'd love to do a yoga flow or go swimming. And then I go into the mind. So meditation, it could be journaling, it could be automatic writing, just something that's stimulating the mind. It could be affirmations, for example. And then spirit. So what is your connection to spirit? How are you doing that? It might be a gratitude list. It might be sending an appreciation text to someone. It might be doing a deep yoga practice, whatever it is, but just something that you have at least a 10-minute routine or a longer routine if you can, and try and do that morning and evening, because you need to dedicate time to yourself before you start dedicating time to the outside world.
I love what you just rattled off, all the things that I actually when I am being a good boy and on my best behavior and not jumping out of bed and jumping right into emails. That's one of the things that I do. You said 7-minute work, like literally there's a 7-minute workout app. I don't know. Yeah. So years ago, I heard about this 7-minute workout that supposedly is the equivalent of 30 minutes of workout or whatever that they were saying at the time. And so I downloaded the app and I've been doing it ever since. And so I highly recommend that, guys. Like it's 14 exercises that you do 30 seconds each, and you definitely feel like you got to work out afterwards, and you can do it in your bedroom, in your living room. You don't need weights. It's great. And it's like the reason I've kind of stuck with it is I'll say to myself, like, Brandon, if you can't do 7 minutes, like at least, a few times a week, you're all hope is lost. Right. And so I highly recommend the 7-minute workout. And, you mentioned yoga and swimming. Those are the other two things that I like to do. So, and you notice you feel so much better when you do. And the other thing for me is getting some sun. Many of us aren't getting enough sun, and they've done studies where they show that most adults have a deprivation of vitamin D, and it's like the most important thing that you can get. It's actually, I guess it's technically not a vitamin, a hormone or something. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but
it's all sorts of energy, right?
Yeah. It's like, that is like energy from the sun, our father, if you want to put it that way. If it's Mother Earth, it's Father Sun, right? It's like that is like the life force of everything, and for your health, for your your mental health, your physical health. It's like take a few minutes and get sunlight as well. That's another thing that I think people are really deprived of.
That's the first thing I love to do. Is if it's a nice day, I'm in Spain right now, so I've been fortunate with the weather, but back home in England, obviously we don't get that much. But when it is, first thing I do is I just go outside barefoot, stand in the grass and just absorb the sun.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you said something earlier about the subconscious mind and it always being in the present moment. Can you elaborate on that?
So time as we know it is a concept of the conscious mind, right? So with the conscious mind, we can time travel. We can talk about the past. We can go into the future. We can be suffering from something that happened a few years ago and be anxious about something that hasn't happened yet. All the while, we're never in the present moment. The subconscious mind only knows the now, the present moment. And so it doesn't have time as a function. Humans are we're known as the timekeepers. We're the ones that always count time. So what does this mean? This means that, say, for example, you experienced a trauma or there's a limiting belief that is stopping you from leveling up. Your subconscious is always believing that to be true. So let's just say I was dealing with someone who had gone into a car accident a month ago, and now she's talking about the car accident, and all of a sudden her body starts tensing up. Her breath starts going shorter and shorter. Why? Because the subconscious believes it's happening again. Right. So it's really important then to transform the stuff now, because all of this stuff it's always going on 24/7. So whenever you're not feeling, the best that you can feel, or there's something blocking you, that normally is a sign that there's something that needs to be given your attention to.
Yeah, and this really plays into what I talk about a lot on the show, why it's so important to tell stories that serve you, right? Because 100%. It's all, the subconscious, like you said, doesn't know the difference. So what story are you telling about your present moment? What are you focusing on? What are you drumming up more of? It's like, we were told a lot of times as children to, get our head out of the clouds kind of thing, when actually our imagination is the most powerful tool that we can possibly use. And that's why, those who really, don't fall into, don't grow up, it's a trap kind of thing, right? Become as I like to put it, my aim is to be the poster adult for childhood. And once you sort of really, you can maintain some of that childlike wonder and imagination, and like the Bible says, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And so this is the path, is like using this this powerful tool that you have, not to sit there and think these and focus on these things that just truly crush your inner child.
Yeah, 100%. As in, it's been designed in a way to suppress your spirit, because obviously if everyone was empowered, the system wouldn't work as it needed to work. So we
Right.
have a society that's predominantly left brain. We're very logical, we're very analytical, we're very masculine orientated. And as you said, from a young age, we're always taught to listen to the mind over the heart, the mind over the gut, what have you. And now we're shifting into a bit more of a whole brain state. So we're utilizing the right brain, the one of creativity, of intuition, of more of a feminine nature. And when you use both of these in tangent with each other, and can actually utilize the benefits of both, that's when you then see the world as a place of wonder, as a place of curiosity, without all of your preconceived beliefs and filters that you've set up.
Right. Right. And, obviously, our blocks, everyone has different kinds of blocks, right? And that keep us from sort of elevating our vibration and becoming our greatest and grandest self. You of course, and you just gave some great ideas of how to deal with those blocks, with some very, simple practices. Is there any other, more robust, I guess, practices or ideas of how people can, especially, some people have some very deep wounds and stubborn blocks that people can work on them, on their own, that you would
Yeah,
suggest?
I think journaling is a really good process when someone's gone through a deep trauma or stuff that's happened. And there are a number of questions you can ask, how did it make me feel? What's lingering? What's the lingering energy? How do I want to feel instead? All this kind of stuff. But I think above and beyond, it's okay to ask for help. And a lot of people don't realize that, or they feel like disempowered when they're asking for help. And I think that's a really taboo thing that we need to now unblock, is that it's okay to go and speak to a friend about something that happened, or to speak to someone else that you resonate with. And another thing that's I think it's a really good process to do, is building moments of stillness in your day. So have you ever had that moment potentially when you were thinking about a problem, couldn't solve it, and then maybe you were out on a walk or you were in the shower and suddenly you got the idea?
Yeah. Yep.
Right, it happens to all of us. Now, what we're doing there is the subconscious is always operating. So when we build in moments of stillness in the day, maybe 3 times 15 minutes a day, could be a walk, it could be a shower, it could be just doing nothing and sitting. You're allowing the mind to deal with stuff that it hasn't been able to deal with. Because, for example, with trauma, one of the first things that we experience with trauma is the belief that we are not safe. When we're not safe, we then tend to disassociate if it's deep trauma. So that means that we have an emotional block. There's no emotional barrier. It's like a blank place, right? There's nothing going in and out. And only when you give yourself moments to be still do you then allow your mind and your body to process what happened a few weeks or years or months ago. And that's especially what I'm seeing with COVID, is that a lot of people were busy being busy, right? They were just doing so much stuff to avoid doing what they knew they had to do. And now I think everyone's had a huge wake-up call about maybe their family life, their work, just their inner self, their personal relationship, whatever. But now they're really starting to face things that maybe they were kind of pushing under the carpet.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great point. COVID has definitely brought a lot of challenges, but I think for a lot of people, it has, there's been some, like a lot of challenging circumstances. There's gifts there, right? And has helped people to sort of self-examine a little bit more.
Yeah, I think as a collective, as a human species, we got off pretty easy, because just the fact that if this thing can literally bring us to our knees, that shows that the current systems we have are obviously not as optimal as they should be.
Right.
But I think this was a huge wake up call for a lot of people. I think we were, the way we were living as a species was not exactly aligned with the planet. We weren't really caring about how we were living. And I think just having this moment of pause, as in, you probably have seen some of the images of just this amazing nature all over the world. I think I saw one of LA where you could see the ocean before, where there was pollution. There was sea life and aquatic creatures returning to Venice, dolphins which hadn't been spotted in 50 years.
That's where I'm at. Yeah. That's where I'm at right now.
Amazing. So, it's just about understanding that. I think that's a huge lesson, that the earth simply in that few month or however long it was of stillness, it began to heal, right? And that's same with us. Whenever we have stillness, we can then start the process of healing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, to speak a little bit more to the whole COVID thing, because it's obviously been the biggest thing that's happened to this planet in a long time.
Right.
I think of Bruce Lipton and the biology of belief, and how I personally believe the biggest issue with threat is the fear that's surrounding it and the isolation. On one side, I think it's been there's been gifts there for people to self-examine and really, disrupt their, autopilot life that they were living. And then the other side of that coin is it's caused, people to be isolated for a long period of time. And especially for people who are tuning into, the television that is telling them a vision of fear surrounding this, and this is something that Bruce talks about, in biology of belief, or in that video I talked about on YouTube that you can Google biology of belief and see. He shows what actually happens when you're scared and how that literally, is doing harm to your body and is actually inviting the more issues. And it's like, if you're in fight or flight, then you are your body is so concerned about your subconscious, right? Thinks it's real, right. And so it's protecting itself in that moment instead of healing your something that needs to be healed maybe on your body, or doing things that are more proactive. It's in this defensive state that in releasing stress hormones and all of those things, which actually do damage, especially when you're in that for a long period of time. So I think for me, that's one of the best things. I've told the story my whole life, Abid, that I don't believe in getting sick. And that's just a story that I made up when I was young, and I've just continued to tell it, and it's continued to serve me. And literally, I've hardly ever been sick. I've never been in a hospital in my life. And, and so it's by believing that, I've co-created that. And so I'm not telling people to be foolish about COVID or any of those things and just to throw all caution to the wind. However, and certainly I probably throw caution to the wind a lot more than most, but it's something that I've been, doing and has served me time and time again. And so I give no energy towards it. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not fearful of it. I'm not, so I think people finding their own flow with that, and certainly a great place to start to deprogram your subconscious. If you're out there listening to all the fearful talk about it all day, every day, I personally don't believe it is serving you in any way, shape, or form. Spend that same energy on focusing on what you want to see more of, right? And doing things that are health affirming and calming your nervous system and programming beautiful things into your subconscious, not, something that's can be terrifying otherwise.
Beautifully said. Absolutely, yeah. Because I think it's when you're in a state of fear, your immune system is suppressed by 40%. And as you just said there, when we are, the most amazing thing about human beings is first of all, it's our imagination, but also our ability to think. And we're literally walking chemical factories. So whenever we think a thought, we release a concoction of chemicals. Now, you can only imagine, as you said, that when you're watching the news 24/7, what chemicals are you flooding your body with? Most likely all the stress-related chemicals. But ultimately, there's a different thing between knowing what's happening and then setting up a energetic barrier between that and then drowning in the information. Because news travels fast, as in I'm sure you can probably imagine, even me on the other side of the world, when 9/11 happened, I knew exactly where I was, I knew what happened, and I knew how I got the information. I wasn't watching the news, right? So understanding that this kind of stuff, whenever there's an update, you're going to get the update, but you do not need to control and drown yourself in everything that's happened, because that's not good for your health. And it's definitely not good to allow you to kind of sink down and become constricted and feel heavy with all of these denser energies and these emotions of fear, of hate, of jealousy, of divide, all this kind of stuff.
I think that is such a powerful point. You're going to get the update if it's important. You're going to hear if there's something super important you need to hear. I watch no news, and I don't feel like I'm out of the know on anything. If it's relevant enough, it finds its ways to my ears, right? Or to my
Exactly.
eyes on a Facebook post or whatever it is, and so alternatively, what you just said, I love putting a number to it, and I want to make sure I don't forget this again. I'm sure I heard it in the past. And 40%. So let me see. I'm worried about protecting myself. So I want to be safe. So logically, I'm going to sit down in front of a TV that we've now seen is a propaganda machine. I don't know if you've seen it where they take all the different newscasters and string it together where they're saying the exact same words across the country. It's creepy. Yeah, it's creepy. I mean, like a couple companies own all of it. It's like they're literally telling you the vision they want to tell you. And it's a propaganda machine at this point. News is not what it used to be, for sure. And so I'm going to sit and I'm going to tune into that vibrational frequency, and with the aim of informing myself. And really, what I'm doing is getting propaganda told to me. Who knows what the real agenda is behind it? Who knows what's actually true anymore? Right. And then the byproduct of that is I'm going to be 40% more susceptible to actually contracting something if I bump up against it, because I've basically, set the controls on my bio bodysuit in a way that invites it and makes me that much less defended, right? And so, it's incredible when you start thinking about it that way.
Yeah, and that's a great point about the TV because, as you said, we now know that the TV is, as you said, a propaganda machine. But what's interesting is when you're watching the TV, I think they did studies on this, your brainwave slips from being in a beta frequency, which is your normal kind of waking state, to an alpha frequency, which is relaxed light meditation. And in that frequency, your subconscious is open, right? So these advertisers, these news programs, what have you, they know exactly what to say to activate your subconscious. So even if you're watching 50 minutes or half an hour of TV, that subconscious impression is going to carry on for the next few days. And I've certainly seen this with members of my family who maybe they went on holiday, they were relaxed, they were centered, they came back, started going into their habit of watching the news, reading the newspaper. They started becoming more fearful, more limiting, more disempowering.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Me too. You can see it. Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our new sponsor, KiwiCo. With everything going on in the world, there are more kids than ever learning at home these days. And KiwiCo can basically deliver a science fair right to their door. KiwiCo has an incredible amount of highly creative, do-it-yourself projects for all age ranges. As a huge music fan since about 12 years old, I personally would have loved building the real working light-up speaker and headphones when I was just starting to jam out. As a parent now of a grown-up kid, I wish I had had something like KiwiCo when my son was small, because I remember how hard it can be to find creative and new things to keep him busy and challenged on his own or to tackle together. And not only do they have different crates for kids of all ages, but they send one every month. Now, of course, there's no commitment and you can pause or cancel anytime you like. KiwiCo truly is redefining play with hands-on projects that build confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills. They have something for every kid or kid at heart. And the best part is all UP heads can get your first month free on select crates at KiwiCo.com/positivehead. That's KiwiCo.com/positivehead. Yeah, and of course, one of the things that I think is being disrupted now is, part of this is the collective beliefs that we've had. I mean, you have more and more people that are questioning and I think have less confidence in what the government tells us or what the television tells us than ever, which is beautiful in a sense. I think we're seeing a collective breaking down, of an old system right now. And that is, not always... it's not always a simple or beautiful thing to behold, or it can certainly be scary when certainly I always say it's I'm sure it's a little bit frightening for the caterpillar when it's melting into a goo before it becomes a butterfly, you know? And I think we've got a gluey globe right now. I hold the vision that it's something old is sort of breaking down so that something new can be born. Curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think it's let me derive, we're in this period of, people call it the Great Awakening, the Ascension, whatever you want to call it. In the Indian literature, we call it the age of Shiva. Now, what this means is this is the age of destruction and then rebirth, right? Mm-hmm. So although there is the rebirth of a whole new world, a whole new belief system about how we can actually live in harmony, there has to come destruction first. We have to destroy the old systems that were keeping people disempowered and by any means necessary. And that's what we're seeing with COVID. We're seeing that COVID is really taking down from its knees the financial system, the political system, the societal glue that everyone, believed what the government said. That's really now being put into question. And in the larger scheme of things, I think it is beautiful. I really think it is beautiful.
Yeah. I always, longtime listeners probably know what I'm going to share next, because I think the best sort of analogy for this is looking at the butterfly, like I just touched on. It's like, here's this caterpillar that goes around and, literally I just had my mom, I told her this for the first time. She's like, oh, how funny. I just had a caterpillar. I was saying, caterpillar goes around and it destroys everything. And she's like, you're right. It just destroyed my geraniums that I've taken care of for 2 years and now they're dead, And so, here this caterpillar came. She had these beautiful flowers. It destroyed them completely, right? Yeah. And so it's just eating. And then all of a sudden, an Imaginell cell pops up in it. And the caterpillar cell says, what is this invader? This doesn't belong here. And it kills it off. But then another Imaginell cell pops up. And then another. And then they start popping up in tandem and working together, which, is what's happening on our planet. People are awakening and starting to work together for good. And at first, they're crushed. They're pushed down. We've seen that throughout history, right? These Imaginell cells. And then, but there gets to a point where there's so many of them and they're working together to create transformation. And then a tipping point happens. And that's when the, caterpillar sort of, that tipping point happens. All the destruction that the caterpillar created up until that point, the caterpillar cells actually turn into a goo, an energy that the Imaginell cells feed off of to put it through the chrysalis and, out the other side as the butterfly. So all the destruction was actually fuel that led to the butterfly's birth. And so when you can hold that vision for humanity, you really see the beauty and the necessity in the dysfunctional society and system that we've had. And we are in the process. I think I've called this the COVID chrysalis. It's like we've been in it, man. And so instead of being racked in fear, listening to the fear box tell you about why you should be more scared, start holding the vision of a butterfly society being birthed, and like you said, was talked about in great, Vedic philosophy, and so it's incredible when you start seeing it from that lens, start telling that story. It now takes on a different hue. It's really becomes a beautiful thing that's transpiring.
That's amazing. I love that analogy. And that point you said about, envisioning what is going to happen after this. Like, what is humanity going to do post-COVID? How are we going to live? How are we going to interact? Because I think above all, this has really given us a face-to-face sense of our mortality and also our equality. Because, my health is dependent upon your health. Your health is dependent on my health. It doesn't matter about color, sex, orientation, none of that.
Yep. All these lines in the sand are illusory. And the more we can, yes, it's important to acknowledge what's happened in the past. And it's, there's a reason they train a race car driver, when they're first training them, if they start to spin out, they teach them whatever you do, don't look at the wall. And the reason is, you can probably guess, what happens if you look at the wall? You hit the wall.
Yep.
So, yes, there's been all kinds of atrocities. Yes, there's been, people marginalized. Yes, all of that is valid. And where are we going to hold our vision? Where do we want to go to next? Because, where attention goes, energy flows. So how do we focus on what we want to see more of, and not so much on, the issues, the problems, the justice that has not been served oftentimes to people, because of race, color, creed, whatever, so many different reasons. There's been, if we wanted to focus on all the, injustice, we could definitely do that for an eternity, right? There's been so much. And so, yeah, I think that's a really important thing too, is, a lot of the things that are bubbling up now. That's why, it's like, okay, where can I put my energy? It's like Mother Teresa, and they asked her to march against the war in Vietnam. She said, I'll never do that, but have a march for peace and I'll be there, because she understood this,
Wow.
And so I think that's really important for people to get now more than ever, because there's so many things inviting our attention,
100%. And I think what's happening is our shadow is being revealed to us, right? Because all of these atrocities, these things were happening, but a lot of us were not aware of it, right? Easy thing is a George Floyd thing. Like this has been happening for centuries, if not, for however long. But just that one video brought the whole global awareness to the situation. And once everyone is aware, then you can start actually plotting the steps of transforming whatever it was that allowed that to happen.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know everyone has their different piece in that equation and a different process. And, some people have obviously been more impacted in a way where healing needs to happen than me as a white male. I get that and want to respect that and honor that, and also hold the vision of, how do we focus on what we want to see next, and not beat the drum too long of what's been wrong, because, that calls in more of that vibration. And it's like, so it's a delicate dance. It really is. It's a fine thing to learn how to, the art of manifestation, which I believe is truly the next great art form on our planet, as we grow. You mentioned the word ascension earlier. It's like, I do believe we are ascending. We are, the vibration of the planet is speeding up. Light is being shown on the dark, shadowy corners, because we are evolving into the next version of humanity, which is going to be closer, in a sense, to vibrationally what it's like on the other side. And when we all think about the other side, you imagine, your pure consciousness, or even the people who've had experiences, whether through, near-death experience or plant medicine or, meditation or what have you. It's like, oh, I'm pure consciousness. You manifest with, or I think of someone who's astral traveled. Oh, I think something instantly appears, right? Yeah. I think that is what we're coming closer and closer to. And we've been in we've had our training wheels on, so to speak. I think there's been a big lag in luckily so. I think this is a perfectly divinely designed, holographic training ground that we've been in, where it's like, okay, luckily there's a lag between what I think and what manifests, because wow, I really needed to work on my conscious and subconscious thoughts and beliefs. And now I believe there's a quickening happening where that gap is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So really the next great art form is the art of manifestation, where things are happening in a blink of an eye, essentially, where you're giving your energy to is then reflecting back to you. And I'm seeing that, in my own life, like in ways that it's been, even in the last 24 hours, I've had challenges with things where I'm like, okay, Brandon, this is really hairy what I'm dealing with. And a person, dealing with someone who even is like, not to go deep into it, but like somewhat, some mental instability, right? Some definitely mental health challenges that I have to deal with. And it's like, okay, I can as soon as I started reacting a little bit with fear, things got really just hairy, right? As soon as I brought love to it, and focused on, holding a different vantage point and view, everything, eased and just in the tension dispersed. And so it's like, oh, okay, it's really important. This person is actually a training ground that I'm being forced to deal with in this moment. Well, it'd be so easy to go down the path of focusing on why I should be agitated, upset, fearful, angry, or what, how do I bring love and a calm energy to it? And it's instant. It's fascinating to watch how those different vantage points can transform your experience. Radical difference.
It's amazing because I think really everything bows down in the face of love, right? Love is the overriding, the most powerful energy that is. It's one of the ones that really, it transcends even just our conscious awareness and that kind of stuff. But above all, it's bringing you back to your power, right? Like, do you want to be that feared, stressed out person or not? And it's about taking responsibility. It's about taking responsibility for your emotions, for your life, and then you can do something about it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, a big part of that, scanning, sort of looking at checking out your podcast a little bit. And one of the latest ones is you talk about surrendering, why surrendering might be your greatest superpower. And I think that's a big thing for those, especially those of us who are, have a lot of energy and sort of fight in us, it's like knowing when it is important to surrender and ride the wave as opposed to paddling upstream, right?
100%. Yeah, exactly. It's we can spend all of that energy going upstream against the current, and in the end we become more stressed out. And once we let go and we go with the flow, we understand that things out here are working for us, first of all. And this is a huge collective limiting belief, is we believe the world is going against us, is working against us, but it's always working for us, and it's always working better than we can ever imagine. I'm sure there's moments in your life where no matter how much plotting or planning you tried to do, something happened that led to something else, which was beyond your even awareness. You're like, wow, I'm so grateful that this happened in my life. And surrendering was definitely the key word for me. I read The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer, I think.
Michael Singer. Yeah. I love that book. I read it as well.
Yeah, phenomenal book. And after that, it's so true, because I think a lot of us have got this belief of kind of hustle over alignment, right? We feel that we have to always be working, always be struggling to get to where we want to go. And, that's some people's reality. Some people believe that only if they struggle, they will then get to where they want to go. And other people believe the opposite. They're in complete surrender and they end up going further than they could ever imagine, simply by allowing the flow of life to go ahead. And I find it so interesting that, we call ourselves the most, we are the peak of evolution on this planet, at least, yet we are the ones that are struggling the most. We can't say we're the most happiest, most loving generation, but we're certainly some of the most depressed and the most medicated generation. So what does that say about us?
Yeah. I think, I think it's a double-edged sword, being human, because we've got all these great gifts. It's sort of like eating from the apple, right? Like you received all this knowledge now, and that is also a handicap in a sense. Whereas the lily in the field, it's like, and to quote another Bible verse, and I'm not religious, per se, like as in I worship something external of myself, but there's some beautiful things in there. Yeah, there's such beautiful wisdom in there. And I just, of course, believe Jesus was teaching the same thing we're talking about. I and the Father are one. Everything is one. You can, with the faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. Like he was just saying all the same stuff we talk about incessantly on this podcast. But another great scripture is, consider the lilies of the field, how they neither toil nor spin. So you may look at a lily and say, oh, I'm way more evolved and advanced than that. Okay, yes, you have knowledge and, you are you're expanding your consciousness perhaps in a way that the lily is not, even though it's a living organism. And there's great wisdom in that you can learn from the lily that doesn't, hey, if it rains, it rains. I let it rain. Cool. If I'm not fighting against the wind. I'm not fighting against what's happening. I'm riding the wave of what is, and we're toiling and spinning and swimming upstream so often. And when you can learn, I think now more than ever with what's happening on the planet, especially as this, the collective goo that everything's melting down into, like how do you learn when it's appropriate to surrender, ride the waves, and focus your attention on, what you want to see more of, and trust the process. Like you said, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. Life is always happening for you. And that's what a master really gets. It's like, okay, this isn't what I would have consciously chose for myself. Yet this is what I'm seeing and facing, and I'm just wise enough to know it's happening for me, not to me. So, okay, why is this happening for me is one of the greatest questions you can ask yourself. And then to approach everything that you're dealing with from that vantage point. And that's where you start to find the gifts and the silver linings and the, you can sort of become the piece of coal that holds up well under pressure and transform into situations into a diamond that way.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was Steve Jobs. He said in his commencement speech that you can't connect the dots when you're looking at it, but you can connect the dots looking backwards, right? And that's a beautiful question you said. Just asking, like, what is this actually bringing me? What is the hidden gift in this? Because there's always a hidden gift in the stress, in the trauma, if you're willing to look there, right? And I think another really important thing is that we have to experience something to know if we want it or not. So we have to experience anger to know what love is. We have to experience sadness to know what happiness is. We have to experience stress to know what peace is. We have to experience the opposite so we can then know what it is we want and where we stand. And that goes hand in hand with one of the universal laws. I think it's the law of polarity, where it says that positive and negative events create the energy for us to move forward and grow. Some of these people have come out even more loving, even more forgiving, even more compassionate, they've tapped into something which they didn't even know was there, but this trauma opened up for them.
That's an important point. It's like those of you out there who've had really challenging experiences, really traumatic experiences. A lot of times I think it's easy to fall into a narrative of like, oh, well, of course I haven't achieved what someone else did because they didn't have the challenges or trauma that I had, and use that as a story that aids your limitation. Whereas another way to look at it is, the more challenged you are, the more of a badass your soul is, I would say. It's like I've heard it said before. I heard it said before that there's a huge line in heaven on the other side to come into physical handicapped, for example, because the opportunity for growth is so vast, and it's like, wow, yeah, what a perspective to consider, right? You out there listening who's had incredible challenge and trauma and difficulty, instead of saying that's my story that is going to continue to justify my limitation of living the life that you actually deserve. You deserve the best life possible. If anyone deserves goodness, you do. We all do. We're all one with source, right? Yep. And so the question is always, what part of source of it all do you want to experience next? Do you want to experience more lack, limitation, pain, suffering surrounding your story? You're justified in that. You can do that. There's no problem. Or you can now use it as the fuel to transform you into the butterfly you are inevitably going to become, whether in this life or 100 lifetimes from now. We're floating in eternity as you listen to this. Time is an illusion. So when are you going to shift that perspective to have these things serve you instead of limit you? And I think that's a really powerful one to think, wow, the more challenged I've been is, the more blessed I am. The greater one toils for their freedom, the greater the sense of freedom that's attained. As you said, like, you can't know love without knowing its opposite. You can't know, all this contrast is needed. And for those of you who have experienced a lot of contrast, quote unquote, negative contrast, wow, congratulations. Because the upside of that is really, really beautiful and powerful.
There you go. Yeah, it's showing you what's possible for you the opposite way, right? You go to the negative, that equally the positive way is powerful for you. And that is what you said about coming in as handicapped and stuff. That's a amazing perspective. And I think you have to understand with that perspective, a lot of people believe that we are solely physical matter, right? But we are very much spiritual beings having a physical experience. So when you look at everything through a spiritual angle, then you become more at peace with what it is, because otherwise the mind will take over and it will make hell for you. And when you dive into that, that heart-centeredness and step into, what can I learn from this and what have you, then you really transform that illusion of separation, which I think a lot of us are under that spell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like to, as we sort of wind down here, I'd like to shift gears for a few minutes and hear a little bit of story time from you. If you got a good synchronicity, serendipity, positive paranormal story up your sleeve, I love hearing those types of stories, and always so inspiring. And you got anything fun to share?
I'll tell you the story that actually set me off on this path. So that
Perfect.
was, so when I was in business school, basically for my third year of studying, we had to grow abroad. So I was studying international business. I had to go abroad and work for a year. Now, I was studying in the UK. For me to study, ideally, my dream, Brandon, was to work in New York. I had always wanted to work in New York, just from a business perspective. It's like the epicenter of business, right? That's the conditioned mindset that I had. And because I was in the UK, I could only work in Asia and Europe because of the ease of visa. Now, at this time, my friend had introduced me to Abraham Hicks and the law of attraction. And I was like, this is that woo-woo stuff. It's not going to work. But I really wanted this job in New York. So I was like, okay, look, let me just try and at least give it a try. It's like, it's not going to do any harm, right? So all I did was I put up a desktop wallpaper of a street in New York, quote unquote, random street. And mind you, my university said it was impossible for me to get a job in New York. No one had ever done it before in the history. So I was like, okay, that's great. So what I did is I reached out to 100 people. No one replied back for my CV. I was literally coming up to 2 weeks before my deadline. Meanwhile, all I was doing was just visualizing myself on this street, smelling the smell, hearing the sounds of the traffic, what have you. I got 2 amazing job offers in Europe and in Spain, in Germany. And I had to then, I think what's interesting is the universe then tests your faith, right? It's like, if you really want this, I'm going to send you a decoy. I'm going to send you something which you almost thought you wanted. And are you going to surrender to that? So I had 2 weeks left to put my job forward to the university. And I declined all the offers that I had in full faith that I was going to get something in New York. And nothing had manifested to that point. And then lo and behold, an old friend from school, his dad happened to have an office in New York and happened to need someone that matched my qualifications. How this transpired was crazy, but it gets even weirder. So long story short, I got the visa. Everything happened to the T on time. If I was a day late with anything, I wouldn't have got the visa to go and work there. Now, what got crazy is I was working there. In the first month, I was, just exploring the neighborhood. I was on, I think it was 26th and 6th near the Empire State Building. And I was just walking around one lunchtime, walking around, just kind of exploring what's out there. And I look up I got a little bit lost. I didn't know where I was, but it kind of felt familiar. And I look up, and Brandon, I kid you not, I was standing in the exact same spot where my wallpaper was taken. The picture of my background. And I was like, it took me months to digest. It took me months to digest what had happened, because it questioned everything I knew about the world and myself and the power of the mind. And that's when I really started diving deep and believing, because I think everyone believes that there is something out there and they've experienced it, but they are just conditioned to not believe it.
Yeah.
So that was the story that set me off.
That's such a powerful story. I had John Asseroff on the show a few weeks ago, who his story is super famous law of attraction story from, he was in The Secret. And he shared it in The Secret, and it was similar in that he had a vision board of a house, his dream house with a tennis court, multi-million-dollar mansion, whatever. And he put it on his vision board, and then it ended up in his storage on the East Coast for like 5 years. He, he ended up getting all his stuff out of storage. Finally, he had it shipped out, and then he was unpacking, and his 5-year-old son's like, "Dad, what's this board?" Oh, and he starts explaining what the vision board is and what it means and why he did it, and all these years and years and years ago. And then he gets looking at the picture of the house on his vision board, and it's the house he is literally now living in.
I love it. I love these stories. It gives everyone hope.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is real. And this has been awesome. You have been such a cool guest, and I definitely know people out there will want to connect. And I know your podcast is relatively new, so I'm sure there are people that will want to check it out. Maybe you can tell everyone the best way to follow and connect with
Appreciate
you.
that. Yeah, Brandon, just want to take a moment to honor you for letting me spread a little bit of knowledge and light on this. I love what you're doing. I love the message that you're putting out there, and I think it's so much that is needed in this world. So thank you for being that light. So
Yeah, my
my
pleasure.
under everything is just the optimal being, just helping you become the best version of yourself. So the podcast is the Optimal Being Podcast, website theoptimalbeing.com, Instagram the Optimal Being. Pretty simple.
Perfect. Well, with that being said, I do have one final question to leave you with here. And the question is this: in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Abid Tej?
The meaning of life. Okay. The meaning of life for me is to enjoy and to be in this moment and to understand that you do not need to do anything else than completely be and surrender to the present moment. And the magic is there.
Yes. You are already it. You've already made it. And now you just get to explore the possibilities of that. And it's
Right.
such a powerful, powerful truth. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom, my friend. I look forward to, connecting with you in 3D at some point, I imagine. And all of you,
Yeah.
all,
And I just
all
wanted
of
to,
you. Oh, yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
just wanted to mention that for any of the viewers, I did a rapid session with Brandon. I want to offer that same to anyone
Oh,
that's
yeah,
listening.
that's right.
So just feel free to email me, abid@theoptimalbeing.com, to say that you came through Brandon's podcast, and I'll hook you up with a mini rapid transformation session so you can experience at least some positive shifts in your life.
Beautiful. That's awesome, man. Thank you for doing that. I'm sure people will appreciate that. And all of you out there listening, thank you for tuning in your beautiful brain waves and beautiful heart waves. Until next time, journey well. Love you all so much. Also, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you about the game with the universe on our website. You can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time. And if you go to positivehead.com/universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to spark the curiosity of friends and family by having them choose a number, so they'll hopefully go and check out their number as well, which I greatly appreciate because it helps us to spread the word about the podcast. Once again, the address is positivehead.com/universe. And as a quick reminder, if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them almost every day, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I cannot stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so. I have my favorite, the appleberry shake, at least 5 times a week. Once again, to learn more about the Purium transformation, go to positivehead.com/transformation. Or if you want to keep it simple and just try out my favorite, the appleberry shake, you can go straight over to ishoppurium.com and be sure to use code positivehead for 25% off. I'll spell that for you. It's ishoppurium.com. And be sure to use your Positive Head 25% coupon code.